Hi, you're back with the Oz Arab Media team. I'm Shay Gitani, and today we're diving into a conversation with Daizy Gedeon about the journey to rebuilding Lebanon and Palestine. Daisy, thank you so much for joining us once again on Oz Arab Media.
Thank you, Shay. It's a pleasure to be with you and having this important conversation.
Lebanon is in a very different place than what it was last year. How would you describe this next chapter for Lebanon? What are some opportunities and challenges for the country?
You're absolutely right. January 2025 has seen an incredible shift for Lebanon. The election of the president, Joseph Aoun, the former commander-in-chief of the Lebanese army, and the election or appointment of Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, the former now president of the International Court of Justice. Two incredible people who I believe, based on my knowledge and experience and the conversations and analysis with experts in the region and in particular in Lebanon over the last 3 years and the decade or so now that I've been working very intensely on Lebanon, come at a critical juncture in Lebanon's history. We were facing destruction last year at the hands of Israel's bombardment and the pounding of the country, North Beirut, even the north of Lebanon and into the Bekaa. It was dire straits. We all wanted, and the world was pushing Lebanon to elect a president, and it was incredibly important that after a 2-year vacuum, Lebanon finally appointed and elected someone who has respect from all parties and also has a very good relationship, a very firm relationship with Hezbollah. Hezbollah got terribly weakened by the attacks by Israel last year, but it's not defeated. And there are still elements within Lebanon that could rise to fill the vacuum or the weakened state of Hezbollah. So we're not out of any danger whatsoever. It's so important that now we have two formidable leaders in Nawaf Salam and Joseph Aoun at the helm of Lebanon. And if those two players can forge a strong bond to serve Lebanon and to build the foundations of the future for the country that we all want and have been praying for decades, it will hold Lebanon in good stead. But as I mentioned, there's still a lot of uncertainty around the future. The next step is for the Prime Minister to appoint a government. So that's the ministers of his government. There's been some issues back and forth. It should have been done earlier this week, but that's been delayed. They're still in negotiations. And this is a power play that is happening within Lebanon, and it's always happened within Lebanon by the political parties that make up the government, that make up the parliament, and also behind the scenes, the strength of those political parties that have held Lebanon back and who are still in power. So we're talking about people like Nabi Berri, who is the Speaker of the House. He's still in power. He's the third shift that Lebanon needs to eliminate. He won't be able to be eliminated until the parliamentary elections next year, because he gets elected during the new round of parliamentarians that come into parliament. However, there is a likelihood or hope that he might resign because he might see the writing on the wall, and we can only pray that that might happen. But I believe that he's holding on for dear life because he will lose everything. So we have other players, the Druze, Walid Jumblat through his son Taimur, still a very powerful bloc. We have Lebanese forces through Jaja, a very powerful bloc. And then we have a multitude of other smaller blocs within the parliament who support Hezbollah, who support different elements. And that's what we're facing right now. We have the Change Group, we have the Reformists. They make up approximately 31 members of parliament out of 128. So there's a lot of work to be done. But when you have two incredible people, as I said, formidable experts. Joseph Aoun, let me just talk a little bit more about him. Why I say he's the best candidate, and I believe he was always the best candidate and the only candidate that could come in at this time during this period of transition for Lebanon, because we needed a candidate who could bridge the gap between Hezbollah and the rest of the country. The Lebanese army has never had any real issues with Hezbollah, although they were sitting, uncomfortably side by side with the two military elements and powers within Lebanon. Hezbollah shouldn't have had any military power because it's a militia, and everything should have been under the Lebanese army. But the parliament and leaders across Lebanon for the last 3 decades prevented that from happening. And it had a lot to do with Syria's influence on Lebanon earlier on. So now you have a candidate who can sit down and speak with the leaders of Hezbollah, the parliamentarians who represent Hezbollah within parliament, and potentially bring them into the fold to have discussions to, give up their weapons, to come in under the umbrella of the Lebanese army and to support Lebanon as one united, powerful military force. That is the hope. That is what's legally obligated for them to do, but it still needs to get done, and that is the biggest challenge for Lebanon today. So for me, that's really where we sit, and when I return back to Lebanon in a week and a half, it'll be one of the key focuses for me, and the interviews and investigations and research that I continue to do will be focused on this area and sharing that globally.
Thank you for sharing your insights, Daizy. Obviously, that depth of knowledge coming through and that insight into the different power balances within the parliament is very interesting, especially at this moment for Lebanon. If we could look at the conflict results in many immediate and longer term impacts. What are some of the immediate challenges you could describe for people in Lebanon, Palestine, and Syria?
So, yes, it's a very uncertain time. Again, because we were waiting for President Trump to take office. We were wanting to see what his foreign policy was going to look like. And we've seen he's only been in office 8 or 10 days now, and we've seen an incredible barrage of policy changes, in particular halting all foreign aid to all everywhere, completely on hold, which has, stunned countries, politicians, NGOs all over the world. It impacts Lebanon quite considerably because Lebanon's military, its army, receives a considerable amount of aid from America. They train our officers. There's an annual scheme where Lebanese officers are taken to America, usually Nevada, where they do intensive training, intelligence training, as well as military training. We don't know if that's going to continue for the time being. His policy on Lebanon, Trump's policy on Lebanon, also appears to be holding firm for the moment, but I'm not sure, honestly, how strong it is. Israel requested a 30-day delay in withdrawing from Lebanon. Trump said no. Israel didn't care. They're bombing Lebanon. 21 people were killed in Nabatea overnight. And throughout this entire period, we have seen from day one of the ceasefire being implemented back in November, Israel has never stopped bombing southern Lebanon. So there's the people of Lebanon, those a million or so displaced people who are trying to go home to southern Lebanon are faced with fear, the destruction of thousands of homes. We're seeing the footage now on social media more than on mainstream media, because mainstream media doesn't want to, expose Israel's inhumane, illogical, unwarranted destruction of civilian property, religious property, churches, mosques. Everything has been destroyed in southern Lebanon, complete villages have been annihilated. So I'm not sure whether there is a game being played, because it's very easy, and this is all spin doctoring that they do. They know how to play the game. It's all PR. Trump says something, Israel will do whatever it wants. I mean, we've seen that happening. So for Lebanon, what's important for the people is that there is political stability. And I think what we have to focus on is what we can control. We can't control Israel and we can't control America. What we can control is Lebanon. And our political leaders, I go back to President Aoun and Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, they have the mandate to implement all of our sovereign rights as a nation and demand that Israel stop its bombardment and take that up to the United Nations and also the International Court of Justice. So they're in a position where they've got to get their house in order, and Lebanon has to get its house in order so that it can then use all of the instruments of international law to defend our rights and force Israel to stop. And that will work its way down to the people. The people need stability, they need certainty, and that's the call to action of or on the leaders of Lebanon today. Nothing is really going to change. I mean, I will go back and I will start looking around again, but ultimately everything, every policy, education, health, security, foreign policy, institutional structure, the banking, the finance sector, everything is related to this new government being appointed and put in place by Nawaf Salam, and the leadership that they will now have to take on to represent Lebanon on a global scale. Regionally, Palestine, it's a shocking story. The experts that I've spoken to on different fronts and what we've seen by President Trump's commentary, his first interview, the day he was signing executive orders, day one, was he said, it's their war, not our war. And that's very telling if you read between the lines, because he's basically taking a hands-off approach. But what he's also done is he's eliminated the ban by the US government on sending 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. He's lifted that ban and he's now allowing 2,000-pound bombs, which destroy buildings in a foul swoop and even areas, to go back to be delivered to Israel. What they're going to use it for, I can only assume. They're not going to go bombing Iran anytime soon. That would be World War III. They might use it in Syria, but the likelihood is, as we've seen with the writing on the wall, is that they're now going to escalate, which they have, their attacks on the West Bank. The West Bank globally, by all nations, has been assigned an occupied territory and they've signed treaties and resolutions stating that Israel must end its occupation of the West Bank. But what have we seen in the last couple of weeks? An escalation of violence beyond what we've seen before, with 100 violent settlers being released from prison and let run rampant against, Palestinian families who have no hope of defending themselves. There's no weapons. They've got nothing except stones and a stick, which they are even fearful of using against settlers, because the IDF is right there with the settler with their guns and may shoot the Palestinians. So the situation in Gaza, Palestinians are returning home from northern Gaza, as we've witnessed, to complete devastation, ground zero level. It's almost apocalyptic. It is apocalyptic. There's no other way to describe it. The scenery is unfathomable. Where are they going to live? What are they going to do? Aid is coming into Gaza. That is fantastic. But now they're stopping doctors and nurses from coming in. Israel is a dirty player. Israel never has abided by any of the resolutions or ceasefire agreements that it's signed up to, ever. If you follow the terms of ceasefire agreements, peace agreements, Oslo, 1, Oslo 2, all of them, if you followed it step by step, point by point, Israel has breached everything. And yet it continues to get away. The impunity globally is shocking. And this is what we all need to continue to defend and speak out for is international law, international justice, and put pressure on those instruments and those institutions to bring Israel to justice. So Syria, Iran, as I mentioned, I think with the new leadership coming into Syria, the jury is still out. Jalani appears to be saying all the right things, but we don't know if he's a plant by Israel and America. Israel and America created ISIS. They created Al Qaeda. They created so many enemies to give them justification to wage war and destabilize the Middle East. This is not me saying it. This is American military officials, generals who've worked in the American administration who have retired or who have resigned because they have been appalled by America's foreign policy and military policy in the Middle East. And this has been slowly coming out for decades, 2 decades, since 2000. So I believe that we're going to see ongoing instability in the Middle East. Iran is very quiet. Iran doesn't want a war. Iran wants justice for itself. I'm not saying Iran is a good partner, that it's a nation that has followed and abided by international law itself and that it treats its citizens well. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is, on a grand level, it's not, pitching for a war. It wants to deal. It wants a deal. And that's why it opened negotiations with Saudi Arabia early last year through China. It's trying to normalize its relations with different nations across the region. So there's a lot to go on.
There's a lot to do and a very complex and challenging journey ahead for Lebanon and Palestine. And many people say the parliamentarians are responsible for domestic policy, so the policy in their own country, but requires collective effort, international effort to help in that journey to rebuilding countries that have suffered a lot of devastating and conflicts over the past couple of years. And here at Oz Arab Media, we invite other perspectives and appreciate discussion on the topics, on the conflict in a respectful manner. So if there are people that would like to contribute to the discussion with the Oz Arab Media team or with Daizy, please get in contact with us. Daizy, thank you for sharing that information with us and going through that detail. It's very, very welcome.
Thank you.
If I could move on to the next question, a more personal question for you. What does this next chapter hold for you? What exciting projects or initiatives do you have now as you embark on a new journey in Lebanon?
Well, returning to Lebanon is a very exciting opportunity, and I hope the stability and the peace stays in Lebanon. It's been a wonderful stay in Australia and being with my family and friends and meeting extraordinary people. We did a lot of work here, but it was time for us to regroup, actually, to realign and refocus what it is that we should be working on for Lebanon, and in particular me, because there's so much to do, but you can't dilute your efforts because you've achieved very little. So it's been one of the big lessons I've had to really take on board, because I'm so diluted, and I have been, because I get involved and I get invited to be involved in a lot of things. But for me, the next phase is really to focus on continuing. My team in Lebanon and I will continue to follow Gaza, Palestine, West Bank. It's critical for us, for Lebanon. If we don't follow what's going on there, we don't know what's going to potentially come to Lebanon. And we don't know what's going to happen to Syria and Iran and the rest of the region. So this, on a strategic level, we must be informed with. So we're going to continue that so we know how to respond or prepare. So on that level, we will still work on and cover the issues happening in Gaza and focus much more on the situation in Lebanon. It requires it now. But there is a major project that I have been 2 years in the making. I can't quite give it away because it's still under NDA. So it is huge for Lebanon and for the Lebanese diaspora, for the world. This year is going to be my primary focus, and hopefully within a couple of months I'll be able to share much more detail. But it is going to disrupt and create a vision for Lebanon and outline a path for the future that will reset Lebanon globally. It's a big project, and I'm very excited about it. And it's taken 2 years of a lot of research and planning and analysis and feasibility to ensure that it is a viable project, and we are very confident that it is. So we will let you know more about it when the time comes. So that's my mission for 2025.
Thank you, Daizy. Very focused, and we're very excited to see what's next for you. On behalf of all our viewers, we thank you for your efforts, especially in the last year with the Hands Off Lebanon campaign. Thank you for that. There was one.
Thank you and North Arab Media for supporting us so powerfully. It got the message out so much wider, and without people like you, Shay, and the team, Shadabil and Remy, giving us that support, we won't get our message out. So we need that underpinning of our own community and media organizations such as yourself to really support us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Daizy, if there was one message to our viewers that you would like to share for 2025, what would that be?
It's part of the message I launched for New Year's Eve, and that is that it's so easy to focus on all of the things that we haven't achieved and the negative, all of the mountain of tasks, goals, objectives that are still to be realized. But we should always remember how much we have achieved. And that was an important lesson for me to do in a process that I went through, because looking back at 2024, significant shifts and achievements were made in 2024 for humanity, for Lebanon, for Palestine, and for all of us globally. And that is the path we must continue on, because this is a quote I repeat over and over again because it guides me. It is my barometer. And that is that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice and is bending towards justice. But this is not something that happens instantly. We must continue to work towards justice. And in the end, we will reach that point. So I ask everyone to focus on what you can control, what is in your capacity and capability, however small, to stand up and speak up and take an action. Go and do something, participate in something that serves humanity, not only serves your life. We have to be bigger than our own selves. And that is where inspiration and true courage comes from, and self-esteem. You will feel so much better if you contribute, even in a tiny way, to serve a greater cause that is beyond you. And that's what I want really to share with people and get them to focus on for 2025.
Thank you, Daizy. And thank you for joining us here again to share your insights and obviously your experience. We wish you the best in this next chapter. And for our viewers, please don't forget to like and share this conversation, talk to your networks about the issues that are happening, and get in contact with Daizy or the team at Oz Arab Media if you want to continue the conversation. Daizy, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you again, Shay, and thank you to Oz Arab Media.
Until next time, take care and stay connected.